Welcome to How to Live Slow, the podcast where we discuss slow living for the modern woman and help you design an intentionally slower family life. I'm Rochelle Glendon, your personal slow living coach and host of this podcast. I know all about busy, but I love living slow. Enjoy the show. Well, hello and welcome to another episode of How to Live Slow. I hope you're really well, as always. My guest today is Sam Murrell from Motherhood. Sam is a mum of one and she lives in Essex, and she's the founder of Motherhood. It's a learning and support village for mothers, and she's another one of our beautiful, passionate matrescence activists. And today we're talking about self-love and self-awareness and care and consideration for ourselves through the motherhood journey. And we talk a lot about, the importance of self-care, why matrescence and motherhood is really a time for slowing down, my favorite topics. And we also talk about the difference between mums groups that you get kind of allocated by your doctor or your hospital and women's circles, and what the differences are, how they each serve different purposes, and why they both matter for different reasons. It's a really lovely chat, and I know Sam is such a lovely person, such a gorgeous person, and I know you'll see your story in hers, and that's really the best reason to be listening to today's episode. So I really hope you enjoy it. And before we meet Sam, I just wanted to let you know that the next couple of episodes, we're actually going to be changing tack a little bit. It's not going to be so much about motherhood and slow living over the next couple of episodes. Soon we're going to be meeting a hypnotherapist, we're going to be meeting a productivity coach, and a slow living I'm really excited for you to meet this guest. She is someone in the slow living community who has got a really, prominent profile. She's got a big following. So it's really exciting to have a chat with her. And I can't wait for you to meet those three amazing women as well. So I just wanted to let you know what to expect over the next few months, because that will, as you know, hibernation mode. We are fortnightly until the end of August. If you are missing the How to Live Slow vibes, don't forget to hop over to my website. There are some new exciting things happening over there. Make sure you're subscribed to emails, because over this winter slowdown period, I've been doing a little bit more writing. So there will be some goodies there for you. And so apart from that, I hope that you are finding moments of beautiful slowness and connection during the winter months or the summer holiday months if you're listening from the Northern Hemisphere. Yeah, so let's meet Sam. So I'm so excited to have you with us today, Sam. How are you?
Hey, Rochelle. Oh, I'm super excited to be with you today. I've got a huge grin on my face, as you can probably hear.
I can. Yeah, I'm really excited to have you. I've had a lot of mums from the UK on the show in the last couple of months, so it's really nice to have you as well. Tell us about you and your story, and where are you in the UK, actually?
Thank you so much for having me. It's an honour to speak with you. I'm a huge fan of the podcast anyway. So I live in Essex in the UK. I live in a lovely part of Essex called Epping Forest. So I'm just outside of London. I became a mum in 2018, August 2018, to my beautiful Luna. So she's going to be 3 this year, which sounds crazy because I remember, even in those first weeks, I was like, even a year sounds really old. So even a year sounds really far away. So to now say she's going to be 3, that's crazy. So yeah, so my motherhood journey has been wild, wacky, wonderful, brilliant, inspiring, overwhelming. I could literally use probably every word to describe it. It's been such a journey, and I know I've got so much more ahead of me, and it's been fantastic. And it's also been, as I said, the word overwhelming has come into it, and that's kind of where I started my work, wanting to work with mothers. But just to go back, I had a fairly straightforward pregnancy. I was nauseous. When I say nauseous, 24/7 nausea for about the first 20 weeks. But in terms of, apart from that, it was a pretty straightforward pregnancy. I did all the courses, hypnobirthing, and I was doing yoga and Pilates and read all the books and did all the courses like the good girl and listened to what the medical professionals were telling me, but it was all focused on the pregnancy and my birth. And there was absolutely no preparation whatsoever for what comes after that. I don't even think anybody, apart from some things that my mum said to me and talked to me about, I never really thought about the after bit. It's like when when we prepare for our wedding day, we prepare for our wedding day. It's all a big preparation, and then we don't actually really think about marriage afterwards. And motherhood is for me has been a much bigger event than just getting married. So yeah, I look back and I think, gosh, I was so unprepared. I had quite a traumatic birth. I mean, I won't go into that now, but looking back now, I can see how that fed into, really, I call it a baptism of fire in terms of bringing a newborn home. The adrenaline that kicked in from the birth really ramped up that anxiety. After a few days, that fed into traumatic breastfeeding experience. A huge issue with breastfeeding. I even asking for help from specialists, lactation consultants, but that was a horrendous experience. Adding into that sleep deprivation, hormones, that really led me into anxiety and panic attacks. Actually, I had a lot of panic attacks and feeling completely out of control. It was actually a really frightening and really scary time for me. I actually remember one weekend I was pretty much physically shaking for the 48 hours. I just felt so alone. And looking back now, the stories that fed into my anxiety, as I said, the kind of physical events that happened with the birth and the breastfeeding issues, it was a lot of self-doubt, criticism, judgment, comparison, looking externally for the answers. I didn't know what I was doing. I felt like I was scrabbling around. I sort of didn't understand. I was like, I was so prepared, but look, I just literally know nothing. I just was so anxious about something happening to Luna. We sat up for the first 7 weeks. We sat up in shifts holding her to sleep overnight, and just all this crazy stuff. And the story that I look back now is the good mother story. That was a huge impact on that. It was, a good mother is able to breastfeed with ease. I was sort of thinking, I'm not loving every minute of this. Why am I not loving every minute of this? What's wrong with me? I'm not fit to be a mother. I'm failing, Luna. It was just, when I look back now, I just want to give myself a big hug and just say, oh my God, you just did the absolute best you can. People kept saying, oh, trust your gut, trust your instinct. Well, I'm sorry, but we live a life in a society where we are constantly told, oh, here's an expert on this, here's an expert on this, oh, here's a book on this, here's an expert on this. And obviously it's absolutely fantastic, the things we learn, but we've lost that connection to ourselves. And it sounds like a really woo-woo concept. And, me pre-pregnancy would have been like, what are you talking about? Intuition and gut, and we talk about gut feeling. And when you're a new mother and you're not brought up around children, and I didn't really have any contact with babies apart from sort of friends and my nephew, you then have this baby and you're expected to know what to do. And in Mama Rising we talk about the maternal mandate, and that's obviously the language that I have now, but I didn't have the language at the time to really understand what was going on. And I kept thinking, well, if I don't know, then I'm a bad mum. Why don't I know what she needs and what I should be doing? And baby sleep comes into it and all of this. I had so much shame for how I was feelings of failure and lots of guilt. And I kind of realised that this story had actually been something that had been running in my head really forever, that I wasn't good enough, feelings of lack, and it all comes down to low self-esteem and low self-worth, always looking for that external validation, which is never enough, because no amount of external validation can really make you feel good about yourself, because you need to believe that. But it was exacerbated when I became a mother, because it was the most important thing to me, and it still is the most important thing to me. I wanted to get it right, and I just kept thinking, oh God, what am I doing? I'm doing this wrong. Didn't understand who I was. I remember putting Luna down for a nap one time, and she must have been at least 3 or 4 months old, because sort of before that she hadn't napped anywhere but sort of on me, or perhaps in the sling. Or I remember he was working at home and I went in and sat on the bed next to him. He was in this room, and I just cried, and I was just, well, I probably cried most of the time those first early weeks and months, but I just said, I don't know who I am. Like, I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing. I'd put my baby down for a nap, and I was like, but now what do I do? Like, I just felt like he was in there, in the office, working away, doing his job, and I was like, I don't know who I am. And I I look back and I know there was a lot of, some people liken it to a spiritual awakening, and again that's probably a woo-woo concept in some ways, but when I have looked more into that, it's really that awakening of who am I now, what is my purpose, and all of that. I didn't realize it at the time. I actually felt I was going a bit mad. So this overwhelming responsibility for this new baby was just completely overwhelming. I just never felt like I was doing enough. I'd lived a life. I would talk about external validation, but when you're alone at night with a baby in the early hours of the morning, when you're alone at home all day, there's nobody else telling you that you're doing a good job. And having lived a life, having a career and being in the corporate world, you have reviews and performance reviews, but no one tells you that you're doing a good job, and not believing it yourself and having that internal clarity on who you were and just threw me. And again, looking back, I have the wonder of hindsight, but this lack of value that we put on mothering in the Western culture, and that kind of almost disdain, like, oh, you're off on maternity leave, oh, or enjoy your time off, and kind of, what have you been doing for 9 months, a year, going for coffee and cake, and oh, it's been a nice holiday. Those kind of comments I got from my colleagues, leading into coming from this sort of masculine energy and patriarchal society on, again, the lack of value that we put on mothering, and putting that in context with, I had my career, that sort of corporate identity and success, and then I was thrown into this new baby, didn't know what I was doing, failing, and kind of alongside those perfectionist expectations that I put on myself. And it was, as I said at the beginning, it was a baptism of fire for me.
It's so fascinating to hear that story. Thank you for sharing it, and to know that everybody's details vary slightly, but everybody I've come across as a mum, first time particularly, has a similar experience and those exact same feelings. Like, you get this baby, and I mean, it's very rare to meet someone who's attended another birth before they've attended their own child's birth, and it's very rare to have any baby caring experience and to understand, like, what do you do with this baby? Like, they might teach you how to change their nappy, and they'll sort of indicate how to breastfeed, but that's kind of it. And you're sort of left there, and there is this kind of like social expectation that you just know what to do because you're a woman, and women, like you said, it's called the maternal mandate, right? You're a woman, you should want to have kids, and you should know how to do that and what goes into it. It's not quite like that.
Definitely not like that.
Yeah. And so, that is, and like you said, particularly when you've had a career and then you have kids, there's this masculine energy of like patriarchal society and achieving, and the more you do, if you've got a problem, you solve it by doing stuff. But then when you have a baby, that doesn't work. It is about slowing down and tapping into, like, learning that intuition. You learn intuition through slowing down and connecting with your baby. And the opposite of, you've got this problem of this baby that won't sleep, the thing to do is not to do more. You can't solve that by doing things. You just have to accept it for what it is and find ways of working around your own child, right? That's the sort of thing that doesn't ever get spoken about.
And acceptance is a big one, isn't it? I think for me has been a huge one, and that was the key word, like you said, acceptance of A, we can't solve things in the ways that we're used to, and B, acceptance that we might not be able to change it or change it in the way that we wanted to or expected to, and acceptance that it's not going to happen straight away, or it might not happen at all. So that's been a huge one, and it's a hard one.
And it's that motherhood judgment, right? And I particularly have been having a lot of conversations recently, and totally going off topic here, but just to share, my kids get up at 5 o'clock in the morning, and I've spent a lot of years... I
remember you posting about that.
Yeah. I've spent a lot of years trying to get them to sleep longer. Oh, will I give them protein at lunch? What about protein at dinner? What if I keep them up later? What if I don't give them protein? Should they have carbs? What if I tell them that they can't watch TV or have breakfast in the morning until 6? If they, you do all the things to try to get them to do it. And ultimately what you just have to do is accept that they get up at 5 o'clock and work around that. And life is so much easier when you just accept that. It doesn't matter how much protein you do or don't give them. So.
Oh, it definitely doesn't. No.
Yeah. So yeah, I really have a lot of compassion for you and that experience in that early time. But you've learned a lot since then, and particularly around trusting yourself and listening to your inner guidance and honoring where you're at. And it sounds like you've come such a long way. So what are some of the tools and what have you learnt around that? So I'm sure it's going to help a lot of mums to understand that there are steps.
Yeah, there are, and it is really frustrating when, and this is why I love your podcast, Rochelle, because and the work that you do, because you actually give tangible things. It's what, you know, we have this messaging, oh, just don't do so much, look after yourself, self-care. And it drives me mad, because it's like, well, again, it's, you know, it's something else to add to the mother load. What are we actually doing to help resource women and mothers to do this? And, you know, it's something I'm still learning as and my daughter changes and grows, as I change and grow, as I learn more. And it's a daily practice for me, and it's a constant learning for me. So it's trying different things and trusting that I can help myself, rather than fighting constantly against what my body's trying to tell me, that I need to rest, I need to slow down. You know, if I stay up too late, and when I say too late, like past 9 or 9:30, I actually get a headache. And the amount of times that I've just pushed through that, it's like, that's a simple signal that my body's telling me that I'm tired and I need to go to bed, and I probably should have gone to bed before that. But again, we're overriding those signals. So yeah, just to come back to what I've done and what I do, it's been a bit of a trying things out. It's been quite confronting for me, learning to do that, because rather than pushing over those emotions, of those uncomfortable emotions sometimes with busyness, I've actually had to learn to sit with those emotions and feel the uncomfortableness, and feel that I don't have to necessarily do something about it. It actually, for me, I'm actually an empath, my personality type, and I can get easily overwhelmed by being very busy and having lots to do. You know, it's exacerbated by different things and sleep time of the month, whatever. But it's something that I've only noticed more recently in myself, that it actually fits my nature more in a slower, considered way. And I was always fighting against we come back to it, that very masculine energy, the patriarchal energy of do more, work longer hours, push through, hustle, smash your goals. And it just felt a bit, I can't think of the right words. I'm going to use not a great descriptive word here, icky. I just for so many years just felt really icky. I was just like, well, I'm just not trying hard enough. I just need to try harder. I need to get up earlier. I need to sleep less to do more. And I really, number one for me is absolutely prioritizing sleep, because when I'm really, really tired, I notice in myself that I try and distract myself from that tiredness by doing more. And, you know, just sort of being, you know, sitting and, for example, watching in a play when I'm really, really tired, I find myself really edgy. I should be doing more, and those critical stories come up more as well for me. So sleep it sounds so simple, and I know when you especially have young children, it's really hard to get that, you know. And I try not to fixate on them. I haven't got a solid number of hours. It's just really doing what I can and saying no to things to make sure that I get to bed at an earlier time. And my husband and I are both quite big on our sleep, so you know, we do take it in turns to take that extra treat when we need. So I'd say it sounds so simple, sleep for me, and a huge one. Menstrual cycle awareness has been another one for me, and again, as women, we're told to push that away, push that aside. And, you know, having conversations with friends and things, it's like, oh god, my period's so annoying, I want to be able to do whatever I want. And I'm just and that was definitely me at you know, previously. But really understanding, and I'm still got a lot to learn about that, but even just doing that small steps. In Wild Power they talk about the 1%, just doing the 1% more resting. What 1% thing can you do 1% more of in terms of resting? And for example, when I'm menstruating, I don't do intensive exercise. I've started to kind of look at the days where I'm like to be menstruating and not scheduling too much. It doesn't always work, it's hard because, again, family life and work. But if I look at those few days, I think, right, what can I do do less of? What can I take out in those few days? Or how can I nourish myself in those few days? Things like meditation and journaling for me have been huge to help me assisting with that slowing down. I know that these two things are talked about a lot. They're not for everybody. And I would say to people, if it's not your thing, find the thing that, gardening, or it might be craft. There's lots of things, but I think we forget about all these things that we used to do because we're so busy doing and not listening to ourselves. But we can put all these things in place, but actually, even when we're doing meditation or we're journaling, we are still doing something, and actually doing nothing for 5 to 10 minutes, just sitting and might close your eyes, or just sitting and pondering, is actually really, really hard to do, because even with meditating, we're doing something. And I remember talking to my mum on a similar topic of this, and we were talking about, I don't know, mental health in the modern world, and she was saying, when you're in, once upon a time you'd be in the supermarket and you'd be in the queue and you'd be waiting and you'd just be idly thinking about nothing, or rather than being on your phone, examples like that, and your brain is being constantly fed something, doing something. And she said, those little snippets of those minutes throughout the day were just a rest for your brain. I hope that's helpful in terms of kind of some tangible things. And I hate to be really prescriptive, because I know I feel the pressure when people say, I did sort of these things that really helped me, and I think, right, I need to do those things because that will really help me. And it has been a process of working out what works for me, and as I said, it does change over time. I think also learning about myself has been huge. I learned that I first learned that I was a highly sensitive person, and actually I'm an empath, which means that I deeply process my emotions and situations and other people's emotions. Actually, I really absorb those and take them on, and that can be really exhausting for me, which is something I didn't recognise. So especially with toddlers, they need a lot of emotional co-regulation. And that for me is hugely important, that I'm there for my daughter and I can do that, but I can't do that if I'm not rested and well.
If you're not regulated, how can you regulate her? Exactly. Those are really great tips. And thank you for highlighting the fact that slow living is not just another thing to do. It's not another, there's this, what we were talking about, that patriarchal kind of or even just that corporate world of here's the framework. And if you don't do it like this, you're doing it wrong. It's exactly the same with slowing down. It's not, slow living is not, if you're trying to do it in a certain way and comparing how you think it should be done to what you're doing and you think that you're failing, then so much compassion for that, because if you've got meditation on your list of things to do in air quotes and you can't do it and that stresses you out, then don't put it on the list. The whole idea is to do it to support. We're supposed to be supporting ourselves and down regulating our nervous system so that we do feel well, mentally well, physically well, and able to care for others. I just also wanted to just mention, because I know you said at the start about low self-esteem and low self-worth, and how it's such a thing, right, for so many mums, and something that I've struggled with as well. And that external validation and all of those, the good girl conditioning and everything that comes into play there, and how that might stop us from slowing down because we have to then face those feelings. But just as we can let go of the need to try and get our kids to sleep in past 5 o'clock and force them into some sort of mold, hopefully we can get to a place where we can let go of not fitting into the mold that we're trying to squeeze into in all forms, and just accept it. Get to that acceptance of ourselves and the way that we work, the way our bodies work, the way our mind works, whether we're, like you said, you're a highly sensitive person, and highly sensitive people, particularly, you pick up on energy from other people and that's exhausting. And so there's no way that you could possibly be like the extrovert over there working 20 hours a day. Nobody really can. So I think that's a really important sort of little thing to highlight there. So thank you.
No worries. And I just want to add in there, for me, that self-worth and perfectionism and never feeling good enough, really working on letting that go is helping me to slow down, because things I do, I'm like, I've got to do this. Well, why do I have to do it that way? Why do I have to do X, Y, Z to say that I've done it the right way. Well, where's this right way come from?
Yeah.
And that can be extended into our children. You know, your toddler's spilt something down their top. You don't have to change the top. Adding to laundry, adding to stress, because my daughter, I don't know, you know, my daughter likes to be clothless, naked, quite a lot of the time. Now she's in a phase, and you know, like what to go out with the clothes on, but changing the clothes. I mean, going a little bit on a tangent there, but what I'm saying is that why am I adding these things to myself? I'm trying to live up to this perfectionist expectation. It's damaging for me, for you know, then that ripple effects onto her, and it's like, so the perfectionism and self-worth and never feeling good enough, you know, that all the, you know, that needing that external validation really feeds into that, having to do all the time, and recognizing that my worth isn't wrapped up in what I do, ticking things off a list. It's been really hard and confronting to recognize that in myself. And for me, it's looking at what I can let go of in that list of, I need to do something, I need to do X, Y, and Z to get it completed. Well, okay, if I need to do the thing, why do I have to do it in this prescribed way? Why do I have to put myself under crazy pressure to do something that, well, to do something in the first place if I don't have to do it? It's just really looking at what can I let go of? What can I let go of that isn't serving me, isn't serving my family? And again, that sounds really intangible, but you know, once you start looking at the things that we do in our everyday life, where can we do less, which is actually opposite to what we're conditioned to do more all the time. What can I do? Where can I let go and do less?
Yeah, totally. I think that is one of the reasons why people can't slow down. They can't perceive that it is possible to let go of some of the things that are on your to-do list or on your plate or in your diary. It's just hard to imagine when you're in that zone. It's hard to imagine that some of that stuff is not important. Because also, if it's been important all this time, suddenly you've realised just how much... If you've decided now that it's not important, it's hard to accept that you might have been wasting some time or something in the past on that.
And it's so wrapped up in our own identity, isn't it? And I talk about, you know, becoming a mother and matrescence is this shattering of our identity. You know, we can have this image of ourselves, and I'm going to go into the whole, you know, philosophy behind these sort of things, but being that, you know, I think a lot of women, we have this label as women. Oh, you're such a perfectionist, and it's said in a praise. You know, people say it as praise, and I actually now for myself, I look at perfectionism in myself as having been very damaging to myself and my self-worth, because anything that I do has never been good enough because it's never been perfect. Perfect by my crazy standards. And it's also that conjuncture with society and that gaze of others. If I don't do it in this perfect way, whoever it may be, the daycare provider, the teacher, the person in the shop, they are going to think that I am a bad mother or an incompetent mother or a lazy mother or these labels we put on ourselves. And sometimes that's a judgment that those people wouldn't ever thought, but we also know, and we've all had the comments and we've all had the looks, and we've seen it happen to other people. It does happen. You do, seeing a mother in a supermarket with a child that's having a meltdown and having a really hard time. I've heard the tuts, I've heard the looks, I've heard the, oh, can't they control their child, rather than the compassion of, gosh, they look like they're both having a really hard time. How can I help them to? And I think that is that change that's needed in that, that judgment from society. However, that's going to take a long time, so we need to do the work ourselves.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, the fastest way to stop that story is to stop judging ourselves. So let's take a little bit of a tangent now, and one of the things that we had said we wanted to talk about was about women's circles or support circles. And before we started recording, we were also talking about the difference between women's circles or knowledge circles, or you've got a couple of different options there, versus that hospital assigned mum and baby kind of, or parent group, where you're all just kind of together because of the common denominator of having had a baby in a certain period of time, which both of those things are important and have value, but also possibly some negative side. Anyway, I really want to talk a little bit about that. And we have talked a little bit on this podcast before about women's circles, so I'd love to get your perspective and what benefits you found from sitting in circles with others, and also if you've hosted any, how you found that. So big question there, but a little bit. Yeah.
No, I love it. I love the question because it sometimes feels like we're using different descriptive words to describe the same thing, but they actually aren't the same thing. And understand the difference between the two is and the benefits of the two, I think, is really important. So those, let's go from the prescribed circles of, in the UK we have something called NCT, which is quite popular, and saying, you sign up at the time, my birth is roughly around this time, so they assign you with other couples. The mother is in a relationship, there's usually 8 kind of couples or sort of family units, and you're put together with people that the common denominator is your due dates. And I know that some people have great NCT groups, some, or similarly assigned groups, and others don't have great connections with them. I'm actually really lucky. I have really great connection with my group. They're fantastic, and we have a great connection with those ladies. The only thing I think is often missing from these circles, and it's something that even I myself, before I came to this work, didn't realise, is I don't think we have the language to talk about how we're feeling. So when we have all this stuff come up when we become a mother, we don't actually know how to talk about it. And there also comes a lot of shame and guilt from having some of these feelings, feeling overwhelmed, unsure, etc., etc. So not having the language to talk about it then doesn't get the conversations going. And then if there isn't the one brave person to sort of share openly and honestly, it has, often takes one person to be the catalyst. And then even if there is that one person that does say something or is open and vulnerable, or, I've had conversations with other women who have said that they've been really vulnerable in their whatever group it may be, and the feedback or the judgment has made them not want to share again and be open. So contrast that with the mother circles or the women's circles, and I add into that knowledge circles, which includes some learning. When I say learning, it's to provide the language to enable the honest, open sharing that women's circles provide. It's not knowledge for sort of knowledge's sake. It's putting our beloved Dr. Aurelie Athen always says, language, words create worlds, and that's so true, that being able to have the words and the language enables us to describe our experience. And then when we hear others say those words as well, we can then connect with that story. So for me, the women's circles are the place where we can go to be open and honest, fully open and honest. And that's the premise of them. I always say my circles, these are confidential, they're safe, they're a non-judgmental space. Even if you don't agree with somebody else's experience or opinion, this isn't a place for debate. It's about each person having that space to freely and openly express how they're feeling, their experiences, their story. And it's not about fixing that person. And that's another thing in our society. We try and fix each other. And, I do it as well. We talk to our friends or family, this is bothering me. And we want to help the other person. It's in our human nature to want to help them. But actually, sometimes you just want someone to say, yeah, I hear you. That's really hard what you're going through. I'm here for you. Let's talk about it some more. I'm here if you want to talk some more, or if you don't, and offering that listening ear is actually a skill and something that I've had to learn in order to hold circles for women that enables us to talk really fully and openly about our experiences. And that's where the healing comes in, talking about it, expressing it. And then sometimes, in my women's circles, when I say my women, in this instance, women's circles that I'm effectively a member of rather than ones that I'm hosting, I talk, sometimes there's been something that I've talked about over and over again over a course of weeks or months, because I've reflected on it, and then I've come back in and shared, and then somebody else has reflected. And women generally, and this is a real generalisation, and I don't want to put all women and mothers into this pot, but I'd say that pretty much all the women that I've worked with, and professionally and in terms of my sort of personal experiences of the mother circles, that we want to share and we want to talk, and that's how women communicate with one another generally, and connect with one another, by having those common grounds and those common stories. And you said that at the beginning, is when I talked about my story as a mother, my story isn't it's not unique. It's unique to me, but it's not unique in the sense that so many women go through it in that way. Like there's differences, really. There's common themes there, and for me, hearing other women talk about their experiences and showing that vulnerability, being brave in that vulnerability, because it takes courage to be vulnerable.
It really
especially
does.
if you're not taught it. It's I take so much inspiration from other women being open and honest and vulnerable, and I feel really honoured that they share these parts of their lives with me that sometimes they've never shared with anybody else.
Yeah, and I think like mums groups, or those mum and baby kind of groups that you get, like, I don't know exactly what they call them here, but yeah, you get put into groups with hospitals, and it's just what kind of pram have you got? When does the baby sleep? What carrier do you go in? What's your routine? Breastfeeding, bottle feeding, all of the, crawling. When are they sitting up? Well, who's starting solids? It's all that stuff that's important to talk about to kind of gauge where you're at. But it doesn't actually, you can walk away sometimes and still feel lonely, even though you've been with those people, because you didn't really get to say, I don't know. And like you said, words create worlds, right? Because, or like Dr. Aurelie Athens says, words create worlds. Because for so long, I personally didn't know that, you just don't understand what you're going through. Like you're thinking things in the back of your mind as you're going through your day of like, it's not even, you can't even put language around it. Like, I'm lonely. Am I lonely? Why do I feel like I'm failing? Like, I don't even think I was cognizant of the fact that I felt like I was failing. It just felt like frustration that it wasn't working or whatever, like, why isn't the baby sleeping? And you get angry or whatever. And actually it's because you're feeling like you're failing, but you're not even aware that that's it until someone...
Because and I think that's that, that we're so used to achievement being, I don't know, from school, going, sports day, being the best at running or being the best at beanbag race, and then going into kind of academic achievement. You came top in your class, you got the best grade, you had something tangible to show for it. Then if you go into college or university, you'll have those academic achievements, or then you'll have a pay review at work or a review at work, or someone says to you, oh, you're doing a great job, or yes, physical, or people are saying it to you. Whereas when nobody is saying anything to you and you're used to that external validation, you've never been taught to be proud of your own achievements. It's making your parents proud or making your teacher proud. It comes from, and that isn't a criticism of my parents or anybody, it's just how society was. It's just how we've been conditioned, and we are, by mothering in a different way, we're breaking that mold of that external validation. We're needing that external validation, as one of a number of things, we're breaking the mold. And actually, by having your own sense of self-worth, by doing things that make you feel good, you're doing it because it makes you feel good, you're connecting in with that. I hope for my daughter that she is able to, or she does things because she wants to do them, or because she feels good about it, not because I'm proud of her. I'm proud of her because she's my daughter. She doesn't need to do anything to make me proud of her. But we have that conditioning, don't we, of always looking for external validation, and it's the people pleasing. It's never ending, is it? Because you're always going to disappoint somebody, whatever you do.
Yeah, you're right. And I was just thinking then as well, your kids aren't really, it's not their job to validate you either. And because we're looking for someone to validate us, and obviously we're trying really hard to raise these kids, so we sort of put a pressure on them to validate us for doing a good job at parenting them, but they don't. It's not that they don't care, but it's not their job to turn around and give you the review or the report card to say, well done. It's, in fact, if they don't do that and they go off and you raise them right, or not right, but if you've raised them well, then that's exactly what they're not going to do. They're going to feel that it was all them because you've taught them how to have internal validation.
Sure.
It's catch-22, isn't it?
I did do a good job. I did just checking. It's that. No, I totally get it. It's
wonderful. But women's circles really are growing in popularity, aren't they? Like, I've heard a lot more people talking about them just for the sake of gathering as women to talk about our experiences. which is really, I think, so good. Yeah.
Oh, it's so exciting. And, you know, I talk about some of these concepts feeling a bit woo-woo. And, you know, again, before I had Luna, a lot of this stuff I'd not heard of, or even or was in my consciousness, or I'd a bit like, oh, that's just a bit like floaty and kind of, what is this? And really connecting in with women, other women, and their and really connecting into myself and realizing the strength I have in myself and the strength we have as a collective. And it's been through gathering with other women and mothers is so powerful and so insightful and inspiring. And I'm using all these words and it sounds a bit over the top, but I just don't think you realise the power that we've lost of gathering together. We're separated in our communities and from each other. And, you know, I talk about this so much. You know, we were never meant to mother alone. We were never meant to mother in nuclear families or single parent families, or, you know, the myriad of ways that we parent in these, we parent. Again, it sounds like a woo-woo concept, like women's circles, like, what is it? Like, you just sit around and like chant and, you know, like that was always my kind of view of it. And actually, first time I sat in a women's circle and was asked, how are you? It was that one of the most, I remember it so well, and so it was so powerful. And just having that space to be, rather than just the default, I'm fine, yeah, I'm fine, I'm good, yeah, I'm good, which is what we say to one another. I mean, you know, don't get me wrong, you can't always have these deep and meaningful conversations every time someone asks you, but really being asked, how am I? And somebody listening to the answer and not trying to fix me was incredible. And that is the gift that I want to give to mothers. And it seems so simple, but there is such a power in sharing and being together. And I get excited because I just think we have so women, mothers are so incredible, and we do not give ourselves enough credit. And to value ourselves and value one another, that support and wisdom that you can that can be shared from a woman that's maybe a couple of steps ahead of you, a conscious woman that's a couple of steps ahead of you. When I say conscious, not mothering in the way that we're expected to mother in the, you know, patriarchal sense, a mother that's, you know, we talk about empowered mothering in a way that you want to, by your own values, and doing it your way is absolutely incredible. And if I can give that gift to somebody else, then, you know, my job is done.
We talk about raising kids in a village, and that's how we used to do it. And the loss of the village, well, that is what it is, right? It's just being around each other so that we can have those, to create the opportunity for those conversations, to share the wisdom and the insights that we might not otherwise have. And that's why we need to slow down and take this time to learn. Motherhood, particularly the first few years, is a bit of an apprenticeship, yes. Isn't it? We need to be learning. Yeah, so
I like that word. I've not thought of it like that, and it's so true.
Well, I think of it that way, and I sort of think that relieves the pressure on having to get it right immediately. Yeah. So before we say goodbye,
an apprenticeship without somebody teaching you. So, you know, you normally have an apprenticeship and you'd go in a job, and you'd be learning under somebody.
Yeah, exactly.
There you go.
Well done. Yeah, no, that's right. So, and I think that's the power of women's circles, right? So before we go, have you got any final words of wisdom to share with us?
I mean, I suppose this comes back to, I have a couple of things, of women's circles, you finding that person or those people that you can be really open and honest with, in whatever shape or form that takes, who really listen, not minimise your feelings, not, it could be worse, you know, why are you complaining about that, or, you know, and not necessarily in such an overt way, and not minimising your experiences, and not trying to offer solutions or anything like that. Enabling you to speak honestly and openly has been for me one of the most transformative parts of my motherhood. And being able to speak openly and honestly, so finding those people, and I know it's not always easy to do, and, you know, find your village, that's another job to do on the mother load, isn't it? But I just know it will reduce so much shame and guilt that we feel as mothers if we can be open and honest. So really think about who you can speak to, or where you can find those people if you don't already have them in your life. So that, I definitely say that was one of my first one. And then the second thing is, you have the answers that you need inside of you. And again, that sounds like a really strange, some intangible concepts that people always talk about. Listen to your intuition, but once you start tapping into it, it's really freeing, because we need to peel off these layers of conditioning and expectation and judgments to uncover it, but it's there. And it's freeing because you're not searching for the expert. I'll just do a bit more searching on Google because there must be somebody that knows that thing or that thing, and just put that away. We don't need that. And it's really freeing to know that we have the answers inside of ourselves.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. So never too woo-woo for here. So thank you.
Thank you, Rochelle.
Oh, wonderful. Where can we find you online before we say goodbye, that final thing?
So I am, my website is mothers-hood.co.uk, and so my Motherhood is the name of my business. It's Mothers with an apostrophe after the S, Mothers Hood, and on Instagram I am mothers.hood.
Yeah, I'll put the links in the show notes as always. And yeah, it's a beautiful website, by the way, so well done.
So much.
Thanks so much for joining me today. It's been really lovely to chat.
Thank you, Rochelle. It's been great. Thank you very much. Bye.
That's it for another episode. Thank you so much for joining me today. If you'd like to connect further, the show notes from today's episode, including all the social links and free resources, are over on my website, howtoliveslow.com/podcast. Have a beautiful week ahead, and I'll speak with you again soon.